Hi everyone, thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today with another episode of Presenting Champions. Today, joined by Darren Wilson, founder of SAFE, a fantastic organization helping fighters in various ways with their mental health, physical health, and a number of other things. Darren is also an ex-bare knuckle pit fighter for Spartan Promotions, one of the toughest combat sports in the world. Has overcome many challenges in his life, and I personally feel has a super inspiring life story. And he has not only overcome these problems himself, but he's now taken these many things he's overcome, and he is distilling that wisdom in a way that helps others. So we've got some fantastic stuff to get into today. But first things first, mate. Like I say, thank you very much for coming on. It's great to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Liam. Absolute pleasure. I know you've interviewed some top people, so it's very proud and honoured to asked to give you an interview. So yeah, cheers, man.
No worries at all. Like I say, I respect the work you're doing a lot, and all the time in the world for that. So, getting into it a little bit from the beginning, and I think, like I said, I'm going to start this with a bang. Obviously, talking about your own fighting career, I think that'll get people's attention because it was very exciting what you had there. Obviously, you had some great fights. You've got Marty Barnes, you've got Leon Brazil, you've got all different things. So, talk to us a little bit about in the beginning how that began for you and what actually inspired you to get in there and give that a go, basically.
Yeah, so Spartan Bare Knuckle Fight Club. To be honest, it was Phil Hammond. Phil Hammond, 52-year-old, and I know him outside of Spartan. And I thought, do you know what? If he can get in there and have a go, and he's got balls of steel. You fight anybody. If the man don't turn up, oh yeah, I'll fight, and he's just got his first win at Spartan at weekend in Oldham on Fight Fest 3. So it was a case of, yeah, but do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. Sort of all stems back from being bullied as a kid. I was always really small, really bullied, um, stereotyped, stigmatized, skin condition, big ears, hit puberty late, all that stuff. Anything that could have possibly been picked on as a kid were picked on. And when I got bigger, I swore that I'd never be hurt like that again. So I got into violence, so out of fear. It was like, if I see a glint in your eye and I think you're going to hurt me, you're going down first because I don't want to feel that emotional, physical, mental pain and torture again. So that's sort of how my life went. But to know that it's coming and you're going to be in an arena, in the famous 88 Spartan Bales, with 1,000 people watching you and live pay-per-view and walkout music, and as soon as the man's hand goes up, it was Dave Laws that Disco Dave that ref my first match with Marty, and just knowing you've got your friends and family there watching, yeah, let's give it a go. And I loved it, absolutely loved it, man.
Yeah. So talk us through, obviously with this, what I thought would be the best way to go about it is just to share the things that stick in your mind most, about the fights, the most memorable things, because obviously I could ask a question about, a particular fight or a particular thing, but you were the one who was actually in there, obviously I have to mention as well the smallest arena that you can fight in anywhere as well, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So obviously a lot of people know about the Leon Brazil fight and the draw and everything like that. You can give that a mention, but just your favorite memories, basically. It doesn't have to be from one fight; it can be from any fight that you enjoy most, that you look back on fondly now, basically.
Do you know what? It's the brotherhood, it's the family atmosphere. I had preconceived ideas that it was just going to be mental and it was going to be kicking off outside at Bales, and it's just not like that at all. If anyone wants to come and watch the Spartan show, then they're well run, they're well organised, and there's just no trouble. I think you know what, it's like, you have a fight out on the street, you don't go give the man a hug after and shake his hand and then talk to him on Messenger and have his phone number and stuff like that. I've made lifelong friendships with few blokes that not just that I fought, but with Spartan fans and fighters as a whole, and other promotion fighters and fans as well. Yeah, lifetime friendships that I wouldn't have got unless I stepped into that arena. I mean, it's a buzz as well. It's a buzz. It's raw. It's there. It's bare knuckle. You know you're going for a scrap. You know the man standing outside you is there to take your head off. You're there to take his head off, and may the best man win on the day. You know, the strongest survive. No retreat, no surrender. It's a buzz. I'm gutted I can't physically do it anymore because of the, like you say, the Leon Brazil fight where it was all credit to Christian. You know, I was supposed to fight Scott Midgley, and then the dates got changed. And I was supposed to fight Richard Ben, and he couldn't turn up for some reasons. So Leon were like, right, well, we'll fight. Christian said, well, no, it's a European light heavyweight title, for belt. I'll give you a belt, Daz. Give you a belt, then, you know, because you've turned up ready to fight, and your man Ant. I thought, you know what, I'm here. Why not? Let's do it. Might have been a bad move on my part because it took its toll. I got some good cracks, broke my mandible up in my jaw, 3 operations last year, mouth wired together, long time on opiate bits, medications, having to withdraw off that. I won't change it. Won't change it at all.
Yeah, amazing. It is an amazing story. I mean, it is a tough sport. I mean, it's as tough as it gets, really. You know, and I've got all the respect in the world for that, and you know the guys before, and obviously, you know, mentioned a couple of them there, but absolutely amazing. Obviously, that leads into the founding of Safe. Now, with this, I'm open to where you want to go with it because you were inspired to start that, as I understand it, by some of the struggles that you've been through in your own life. You then saw those reflected in other individuals, you know, who were involved in combat sports. First of all, give us a little bit of a breakdown of SAFE, what it represents, what it stands for anyone that doesn't know. We can obviously talk about that, and then we can sort of lead from there into some of what you've overcome in your own life, basically. But yeah, start with the inspiration to found it. You know, when you first got the idea that this is something that fighters need. I think that's a good place to start with it.
Yeah. So SAFE, SAFE, safeguarding all fighters' eventualities. What we cover is what I identified from my own personal experience around mental health, substance misuse, then bloodborne virus testing, because it's a blood sport. You know, I mean, we've got to make sure that fighters are safe to get in there when there's blood flying about everywhere. You know, if you've seen some cuts and some damage incurred over the weekend, a lot of blood and guts going everywhere. It's a tough sport. It's a tough arena to fight in. You know, so got to keep people safe around that stuff. And also, I noticed that there were a lot of big lads in there. You know what I mean? Proper gym heads and you know, they're steroided out of the nut. You know that obviously, yeah, look good, can lift a lot of weight. However, the implications on people's health with that, where and the gas easy as well, because you know more muscle, more oxygen to go to muscles, and the fatigue really quickly. So unless they catch you with a big bomb straight away, it was getting battered. To be fair, so I put it all together because I couldn't fight anymore, and I wanted to stay involved, and Christian wanted me to stay involved. Said, look, go away and see what you think of. So my background is, like I say, from being 15-year-old, I used drugs, every drug, every going. I was 28 years of heroin, injected user, spending £500 a day on crack cocaine, crack psychosis with aliens, getting into light bulb, you know, for electricity and stuff, and taking light bulbs out, absolutely complete and utter, gone. But I was really ill. I didn't know how to get out of it. I'd made some really bad choices when I was 15 years old that stemmed the 28 years of my life. So I had to show people that there was hope, that people didn't have to go down that path and go to the depths that I'd been to. street homelessness, looking at long prison sentences, trying to commit suicide and being on ICU, and 7 rehabs, coming out and using, not knowing how to live life on life's terms, simple things as paying bills, or I didn't have these life skills, how to do this stuff. So I wanted to support people. I've got a passion for supporting people through lived experience. And it's not to say that I'm cured, because I'm not. I've had, past few weeks have been really difficult, to the point yesterday where I wanted to go smoke crack cocaine. I wanted to go smoke it. I wanted to die yesterday. I wanted to get an antique fire, collect antique firearms, decommission, all that. I wanted to go in the centre of Leeds and just wave it about so police would take me out, because I suffer with mental ill health. I've got coping strategies around that. I went to Rock Solid Boxing Club and spoke with Robbie Adamson, Spartan Bare Knuckle fighter. Spoke to Dean Hunt, Gemma Hunt. Spoke to Scott Latan Mason. And just worked out and got through it, and spoke to my sponsor today and stuff like that. It's another day. I don't do well with emotions, especially negative ones. Why would I? And I experienced them all my life. I'm very emotionally, I'm very young. I'm learning how to identify and feel this stuff without wanting to fix it straight away. So I'm not a finished article, and I never will be a finished article. But I know that I would reach out for support now and humble myself and go, do you know what? I don't have a fucking clue what I'm doing it. Times.
Yeah. It is amazing, everything you've overcome, because there's not just one thing. There's layers, to this, as you mentioned, with starting off with the addiction, or really, I mean, it sounds more like it started off with certain trauma or certain things, like you mentioned about the bullying. Obviously, then addiction, then it sort of builds layer upon layer, and what you've got to do later on is obviously peel those layers back, and it's a very, very, very profound thing. To highlight a couple of things there, and with this, I don't want to dwell on any negativity with this. Basically, I don't want to dwell on it, but just to highlight the contrast of where you are now, versus where you were. You mentioned a couple of things. I mean, you mentioned a suicide attempt. You mentioned homelessness. You mentioned a few things. I think suicide attempt, that's a big one. That's a big one for mental health awareness. That's a big one for people who've been through that. People who are thinking about doing that at the end of the day. And they're sort of on the edge. Talk to us a little bit about what happened there, if you're okay to share it, and sort of how you recovered from that experience, basically how you bounced back from that in the end.
I asked for help. I didn't know what I was doing. I said I'd used drugs all my life. I attempted suicide when I was on the Suboxone script, which is heroin substitute medication. On 16 milligram of that. I was drinking, I was smoking crack cocaine, I was taking tablets, just try to change the way I felt. I ended up taking a lot of antipsychotic medication. I'm waking up 3 days later in Jimmy St James in League Hospital, and wanted sectioning. I didn't feel like I could go back out into the community, but to get sectioned these days is so difficult because of the lack of funding and beds and all that sort of thing. I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to do this stuff myself. So I went to all the mental health groups that I could in local area and learning how to deal with me and this head of mine. I went to a 12-step fellowship to address my drug abuse, and the disease of addiction which lives in my head. It tells me that I'm all right to use, and in a body that when I put one in, can't stop. So that's why we call it an illness. I started becoming vulnerable and saying, do you know what? I'm feeling like this. Don't know what I'm doing. I want to go use. I want to kill myself. These are my thought processes, and I started checking it out with other people. and I got some really, really good nuggets, golden nuggets, like suicide is a temporary solution for. Sorry, it's a. I can't get words out. It's the final solution for a temporary problem. It's once I kill myself, there's no coming back from. There's no coming back. Feelings won't kill me. They might be really uncomfortable, and you sat there and you've got anxiety and your heart beating out your chest, tears behind your throat and your eyes, and your head's 700 miles an hour and you don't know which way to turn, but it won't kill me. Just reached out, Liam. Just reached out and said, actually, I'm at the time I was a 43-year-old man, and I had no idea on how to do life. No idea. So I had to go to people that had been in my situation and knew a way out. I knew a bit about life without using, or life dealing with the mental health, and get some good coping strategies in place through communication, humility, talking therapies, writing stuff down. I write a lot of poetry as well. Sometimes I can't express myself, I can't articulate myself as well as I like. So I bang it down in words. It's all sorts of little tools.
Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, I've seen some of your poetry, by the way, on online. It's really good. I mean, you can really tell that's coming from the soul. And that's coming from deep inside of you. But like I said, when we set this up, I mean, the biggest thing here is it really shows other people who are going through these situations how possible it is to live a good life and get into a good mental and emotional and even spiritual, whatever you believe in, into that headspace that's just in a good place, and you're like a beacon of light in the darkness. I know it sounds really cheesy, but the fact is that you come back from not just one thing, but obviously multiple different things, and you bounce back from it and you're still here. So that's not even a question, but it's just me saying that it's amazing. And obviously the fact that you talk about it as well, that's actually a very brave thing, I mean, that's actually a very, very brave thing, because a lot of people wouldn't speak about it out of shame or out of fear, or all different things.
A lot of it's ego and pride. You know what I mean? If I'm a bare knuckle fighter, if I'm a boxer, if I'm a K1 fighter, if I'm whatever I am, got to keep up this persona that I'm hard and nothing bothers me. It's like water off a duck's back. And inside, a lot of people are just crumbling. They're crumbling, and that's where, especially male suicide, because they don't open up and don't lower the guard, because they don't want to be vulnerable, or they've been hurt in the past and shared some information with somebody and somebody's gossiped about it or whatever. That's why we provide a confidential service. It's like I turn up at Spartan events and I sell some merchandise and stuff to sort of fund what I do, cover my diesel, get the awareness out there. But behind the scenes, I'm speaking to fighters and fans and liaising, and advocating, with homeless stuff, with mental health stuff, with substance abuse stuff, doing all that behind the scenes. But it don't get talked about here because of confidentiality policy, the protection GDPR 18 and stuff. And the fighters themselves don't want it known that I'm supporting them with that stuff, and that's all right, and that's what I'm here for. But I do a lot of work. I do a lot of work behind the scenes that people just don't see.
No, absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously it is all confidential, but I sort of get the vibe from that of people speak with you, they trust you, they confide in you, and it's a powerful thing at the end of the day. You mentioned something else that I want to sort of hone in on a little bit and focus on, because I think it's overlooked a lot. You mentioned earlier about bullying and some of these things, and about violence coming from fear. And I actually think it's a very powerful statement, that, because, as you say, a lot of people, especially in a fight game, they'll put this sort of invincible aura out there of, nothing can touch me and all that. But in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, it's from the fact that they have at one point in time felt the opposite end of the spectrum, felt extremely vulnerable, felt abused, shamed, embarrassed, hurt, all this spectrum of stuff. And I think that's a very, very powerful lesson. How did you learn to effectively be vulnerable? I mean, even when we're talking now, you're being very open about this, all this stuff that you've been through. You're not putting up this bravado or I'm tough and all that sort of thing. Even though you obviously have a tough side, you can obviously look after yourself and all that, but you are out there being vulnerable and all the rest of it. So how did you get to that place of sort of having like a barrier up to being actually this is me, I'm out there? I mean, what was the process you went through with that?
Being broken, being absolutely mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually broken to the point of, I've got to start changing old ideas that were enforced on me through generational stuff like British stiff upper lip, somebody hits you, hit them back harder, show no fear. Um, if you don't do that, I'm going to give you a right good crack, which my dad were all about. And just going, you know what, I've got to change. I've got to change this. I've got to change this. If I carry on going this same old way with the same old thought process and the same old action, I'm going to die. And not only am I going to die, if I stay alive, I'm not going to be living, because it's all that bullshit, bravado and mask and not letting anybody in close and be intimate and being vulnerable. It's living half a life. It's living half a life. I'm not saying I'm the hardest man in the world, not by any stretch of the imagination, if my career shows. However, I can have a do. I can have a do. But I'd rather be known for somebody who can have a do, but can be vulnerable and say, do you know what? Actually, I'm a man. I'm a human being. I'm a scared little boy at times that doesn't have a clue what he's doing. I have grief. I have loss. I feel lonely. Feel anxious at times. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. A lot of things in life, excuse me, I'm still fearful about, but I do them regardless. Regardless. It came up, like I say, came up a point of being absolutely broken where things had to change. If nothing changes, nothing changes.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it does make a lot. Obviously, things like that. I mean, I think you have to go through the experience to really, really, really understand it. But at the same time, I get where you're coming from, and it's a profound lesson because a lot of people, um, when they're putting that bravado up and they're sort of even within themselves they're sort of denying that there's anything there that they need to work on. Obviously the first step of it is as you said earlier, feeling it, the discomfort, the pain, that the sting of those emotions, for obviously to actually acknowledge that something's not right here. It needs to come out, then learn it, then because a lot of people, I mean a lot of people I know, mates of mine, people I grew up with, even myself in different ways. We go through this, and you start feeling something that starts surfacing, and you sort of think, well, what is that I'm actually feeling? And in the beginning, it doesn't even make sense, and you actually have to think, well, or even if it does make sense. I mean, a common one that I've seen in a lot of people I know is, for example, they've survived some type of abuse when they've grown up, physical, emotional, sexual, whatever type of thing it form it comes, and they feel guilty for that happening to them, for example. Just one example out of many, and they feel bad, as if they've done something wrong and all the rest of it. Whereas obviously they haven't, and obviously this was happening to them. And so a common one I've seen, just with people I know, just from not from counselling people, just from talking to people, human to human, is that comes up, and they think, well, why do I feel guilty about that? Obviously, it happened to me. So they try and push it out and think, oh no, I don't really feel like that. I don't really feel bad like that. That's just. But obviously, the first thing you have to do is accept it, and I think that's a very, very, very powerful lesson. And accepting it obviously is different to wallowing in it. It's a totally different thing. Accept it without judgment of it, and just and then you can work with
That's
it.
what we
So
do, Liam. That's what we do. Stuff that went on in my childhood, whether I was being bullied or battered by my dad, or some, I was nearly taken away by a paedophile, and all sorts of stuff. When I was growing up, the emotional attachment of that from a child, and then we get an adult judgment on it, an adult spin on, so I feel guilty for that, or I feel shame, or or I feel low self-worth, or why wasn't I stronger? Why couldn't I do this? And then start taking it inwards. It's all done on an adult brain level. It's all done on an adult experience level of, well, I won't do that now because that's not like I'm now, because I'm not defenseless, I'm not weak, I'm not vulnerable as in that sense. But at the times when this stuff happened, that's how it was. So I've got to give that inner child stuff, that Darren Wilson at whatever age, a bit of a break. Give him some compassion and empathy, and go, do you know what? It's gone. It's what I do with that stuff now, and how I process it. And I liked how you talked about sometimes we don't even know what we're feeling. The biggest one for me, when you feel that emotion coming up and you're not quite sure what it was. The biggest one for me, it was easier to be angry. Easier to be angry and come out sideways, maybe with violence. When really I was feeling hurt or unloved or less than or frustrated or whatever. But I've had to sort of look at what's deeper, look at what's underneath to get to the actual root of the problem. Because once I've got the root of the problem, I start looking at coping strategies around it or working through it. So I know what's actually going on. I'm going to be angry.
Yeah. That's it, and this is the thing you see a lot, especially I think with men as well, because that men don't we don't always allow ourselves to feel the emotion, so obviously what we don't realize is as we're closing off that emotion and actually not feeling it even to ourselves, we're actually not growing, in that process. And obviously, and this is the thing I love about you personally, is obviously being a bare knuckle fighter and being obviously a tough, hard individual, and you are one, obviously, but then also having this other side where you can show emotions, you can be vulnerable, etc. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. Both of those can exist. And I've even in my own life, I've felt this, where there's certain emotions, certain things I felt that you actually sort of shut down on, and you're not even aware that it's there. One day, something happens, something goes on, and the dam breaks, and it comes out. And I don't even label that as in that particular context as mental health. It's just something that you haven't allowed yourself to emotionally sort of grow through or whatever. I've had that in my own life, and I think as men, when we're saying all this stuff, like what is it? Boys don't cry, or people don't feel upset. You don't show your emotions or whatever. One thing not to show it, but then that deepens into the fact you don't really feel it even in yourself. And what I found in my own life is that just leads to being angry. I mean, it seems like the only thing that's left when you shut some of that stuff down is then you just the only thing you can actually show is like lashing out and feeling like
It's
that.
that pressure cooker. That pressure
Yeah,
cooker. Keep pushing them emotions down, whether we're consciously doing it or there was a point where in rehab where I'd had letters from the children, about saying what it was like for them growing up with a dad as an addict and a mum as an addict as well. And the emotion were there, and it was ready to burst out of me. And innately, it just went blank. Just, the body's own defense mechanism went, not having that, and it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just like boom, it gets so far then just blank. And so I had to give myself permission. To feel that stuff. But then I was full of fear, because I thought, if I start crying, I don't think I'm going to be able to stop. And when I let it out, I cried, and I was like in fetal position, middle of a group room, bawling my heart out, because of all that guilt and shame and remorse, and beating myself up, going, how could I do that to my children? And but thankfully through that process, I got got a wonderful relationship with two of my children, and hoping to restart a relationship with my eldest at some point.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
good.
process.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. I was going to ask you that if there's that connection now and that forgiveness. I mean, when I do these interviews, I've always got to balance it with um, talking about stuff that helps people, but I obviously don't ever want to sort of pry into people's personal stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because there's obviously this sort of lines you don't. Yeah, but I still, out of respect for you and for anyone, there's sort of lines you don't cross. But I am glad that obviously with your children that that's in a better situation. Very very much. Another thing to sort of touch on here, because we talked a little bit about the some of the low points. A lot of people who are obviously involved in addiction, and I'm not stereotyping anybody here, um, because I know it's not always the case, but there is often a sort of correlation with not so much with crime, but more with like impulse control and things like that. And people have, people doing stuff when they're under the influence that later on they look back and they think, why did I do that? And I know so many people who have been through that experience, and they're good people. They've got good hearts in them. They're not crooked at all. But when they have too much, when they have a drink, or when they have uh, obviously the addiction side of things or any of that, it can really put them over the edge, and when they wake up from it, they think, like, fuck, did I do that? In your life, was there anything like that you had to come through in that side of things? And again, I don't want to get too personal with this, but just
You
again to help people.
know what, look, Liam, I had 28 years of finding ways and means to get more drugs. Yeah. So my core morals, values, and principles went out the window. They went out the window. Not like you said, about your friend, not because I'm a bad person, it's because the overwhelming desire and need to get high, and not even get high sometimes, just to feel normal, to function. So I wasn't defecating myself, so I wasn't throwing up, so I wasn't like the worst flu you've ever had. Just to function and get through the day. I committed crimes. I stole from friends, family. Um, lot of violent charges under the influence of alcohol, especially. Um, yes, I've never been to prison. I've never been to prison. 28 years of active addiction. I've never been to prison. But goddamn, am I lucky? The last on, so I got clean November 20th, 2017, and that December 18th of that year, I was up in Crown Court sentencing for some charges. And I was looking at 7 years for something I'd done whilst under the influence, and crack cocaine psychosis, alcohol, and lowered inhibitions, not twisted perception on things. And thankfully, I'd started putting the work in, and I got clean. And instead of 7 years prison, I got 30 weeks probation, got a 9-month DRR, which is a drug rehabilitation requirement, certificate 10 groups, giving urine samples each week. And I had a 15-month custodial sentence, suspended for 2 years. So I was very, very lucky. A lot of people that I know that are in recovery weren't that lucky, and they've done big times in jail. I know one lad that was in recovery, went out and his life's off now. You know what I mean? Because of that, like you said, that impulsive, reactionary stuff, and it doesn't make him a bad person. It make me a bad person. Just like the stuff that I hold dear today, my morals, values, and principles. When I'm under the influence, they're gone. The gloves are off, so to speak. Speaking about nothing, but the gloves are off. There's no rationale. There's no actual. Nah, that's a line you don't cross. That's it gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a big one. It is a big one, and it's something that so many areas have it. I mean, most areas have that problem. But like even down where I am in Wales, there's certain areas where it's just rife, you know, and you see people that you know that I know, or then they're good people, and they just, you know, they're not thinking straight. They'll fly off the handle around things. They get themselves into all sorts of stuff. But actually, if you just had a ABC thought process on it, you think, well, that's a stupid idea. But obviously, you know, in that time, then it's a different story. But the other thing you touched on, I want to go back to that I think is very valuable to people listening to this is you mentioned about changing your thought processes, and you mentioned about um, the sort of compounded effect of generations, you know. And I think that's a big one, because one of the things I've looked at a lot, like in my own life, and um, to some extent, people in my family, you know, my parents were a bit into this as well, but into looking into like the subconscious mind, and you know, things that you think habitually without even thinking about them, if that makes sense. Like, you know, your thoughts or habits, obviously changing those, you get different results and everything. So, what was the process you went through with that in terms of changing things that maybe had been there from generations of your family or people you grew up with, or um, things to you that were normal, basically, but then you realize actually they're not serving me, they're not getting me anywhere there. In fact, they're destroying me. You know, that process, if you get where I'm going with this, I actually think it's really valuable, because people don't even know a lot of times that they're thinking something that might be interfering, you know, it might not be helping them. So
Yeah.
what was the process you went through with that, with changing that side of it?
I think I became open-minded. I became open-minded to other people's opinions, other viewpoints. Um, I looked at I looked I looked at what was serving me well, and what weren't. Like my dad, for example, he's he's racist. He's um, a bigot. You know what I mean? He's very down on women, and they should have their place. And you know, my dad was born in 1953, and my granddad worked away a lot, traveling in textile industry, flying all over the world. So I think it's breaking them generational ideas, because as each generation's grown up, there's a set of norms. There's a set of norms, you know what I mean? And as we grow as a human race, and as people, and as men, and as women, and as partners, and all that stuff, and we're together in a multicultural, diverse society, then these preconceived, stereotypical ideas that were put down upon me as a child, I can smash that out of the water, because I get my own experience. But I've got to become open-minded. Also, otherwise, it's like if I'm closed-minded, that this is this, that is that, and that's that, and that's the end of it, then I'm never gonna look at somebody else's viewpoint. I'm never gonna, like I say, all part of that being that broken, that I had to ask other people what's their experience. You know, what's the right way to do things? Is my thinking wrong? Asking that question, you know, we're at a point in life where you can't even trust your own thinking, because your own thinking gets you into a shitload of trouble. And yeah, you've got to open your mind, and be willing to take on suggestions and say, have you tried about thinking this way? Have you tried this little tool? Have you um, why do you think like that? Ask yourself questions. You do a bit of writing about it. So actually, that's not even my stuff. It's not even my stuff to own, or to act on. It's not mine. Somebody else's.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a really, 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 really big one. In fact, I could even say it's one of the biggest ones of, you know, with different subjects, because absolutely, you change your thinking, you change your life, you know, and it's not an overnight. It's not like an overnight thing. Obviously, it takes a long time, but there's so many thoughts that we have in a day that are just so, you know, they're taken for granted, they're habitual, you know, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are indifferent. But one of the things, and again, you know, in my own life, I've worked on this, is like with looking at your beliefs and looking at them from different points of view. I think they call it reframing or something like that, but just looking at it from, instead of from this sort of narrow point of view that you've got, looking at it from this side, from this side, from this side. And yeah, eventually you realize a lot of stuff that, people believe, people act on every day. And like I say, it's not all bad, but a lot of it is not actually belonging to that person. A lot of it, when they were a kid, people put it on them, people made them feel a certain way, people told them a certain thing. And what people seem to think is, obviously, as we get older, we think, well, obviously I was a kid then, so it doesn't matter now. But what they don't realize is, obviously,
So
it's still running. It's still like an app on your phone or something like that. I mean, even if there's apps on your phone that will be running and they'll be draining your battery, but they're not showing you that they're actually working. They're supposed to be off. And it's sort of like that in your brain. You can have these things that they're not your beliefs, so then they're not really helping you. In actual fact, they're usually quite destructive. And I came across this thing years ago about just writing, like your beliefs on certain topics. So you have a belief on, I don't know, on life, or on love, or on money, or on
yeah,
what it means to be successful to that person, whatever it is. And write down what you believe about such and such. And sometimes the answers will surprise you, because sometimes it's something you take so much for granted. I mean, you speak to some people, and they have like a wonderful, loving relationship, and it's great, and everything. You speak to other people, and they'll say, well, there's absolutely no way that love actually exists in the world, and I don't believe in that, so it's a fairy tale. Now, obviously, which one is right? Well, the thing is, people will then only take actions based on what they think, and they'll actually make it happen that way, the good way or the bad way, and that's the thing that people don't realize. I've seen this a lot in sports. What people are thinking about on the run up to like a big fight, or a big thing. They think about losing, or they're worried about losing. There's a bigger chance they're going to lose than if they spend the time visualizing winning. I mean, that's a simple. That's too simple. But as an example, and it's the mind is such a powerful thing that I don't think people realize. Obviously, you've got to look after your body as well, and you've got to look after other things. But I don't think people realize the power of the mind. How the mind and the body are connected. If your body's down, it's going to be bringing your mind down. If your mind's down, it's going to be bringing your body down. They both got to be, you
it's
know.
it's it's a finely tuned machine. It is the
Yeah.
body, with all the organs doing the right thing. So the right nutrition's got to be in there, the right stuff you're reading, the right people around, the right stuff. How you talk to self. If one of my sort of when I fall short sometimes, I'm very self-deprecating. I can pull myself to bits, and that is an inherent learned behaviour from being told I was useless, I was worthless, I'd never amount to anything. All this negative nonsense getting told to me by my peers, by my family, not feeling right in myself. Then it became my tape. I was playing somebody else's tape, and it became mine. So, I catch myself doing it, I've got to go, oh, Daz, that's not real. That's not real. That's not you. That's actually you're this. So I do what's called an inventory, and I have a look. What's real. Because I can go all day, and my head will be going, thought process will be saying, well, you're rubbish, you didn't do that right, and actually for tonight you could have done that better, and blah 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 blah. And if I write down actually the actions that I took, with although the negative tape we're playing, the actions have been quite bloody good, but I haven't felt good, and I haven't talked to myself well, but the actions have been all right. So I've got to have a look at things. Because otherwise, why wouldn't I trust my thought process, that inner voice? Why wouldn't I trust it? It's mine. I've had it 48 years, but it lies to me. It lies to me.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, that's such a big one, and there's a lot of that as well, that people don't realize, like with children, with growing up, that a lot of this stuff, it is emotional, so it's sort of, not so much just the specifics of what people say or whatever, but how it made you feel, as a childhood. And a lot of people will listen to that and they'll think, oh no, that's corny because at that age, obviously it's gone now. But what they don't realize is that feeling, because when you're a child, you're like a sponge anyway, and they say that our brains. I've read this thing somewhere, but basically in a lot of these studies, these Harvard studies and all these big things they do, they'll say that your brain is much more receptive as a child, and as you get older, it actually gets um, it doesn't so much get less receptive. I mean, it's still you can still take in a lot of stuff, but it's not the same as like when you're first growing up. It's literally taking everything in, to such a
The
high level.
formative years, aren't they?
Yeah,
That's
well,
where we form a lot of our thought processes, belief systems, beliefs about self, all that stuff. Based in, I think is it for 7 years? I think it might be for 7 or for 11 years that all that stuff is like say a sponge, this, and then that's grabbed hold of and sort of filed, and this is Darren, this is me. It takes a bit more work to change the myelin pathways, to actually,
yeah. Well, that's it, and there's an element of repetition, with that, that you have to, you can't just say, well, actually, I don't believe that anymore, because then you might sort of acknowledge that and think, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense, but then, you get tired or you get distracted or you're working on something, and obviously that thought will then come back because you're so used to over and over again, so then you have to sort of repetition. And personally, I'm a believer in, like the sort of self-affirmations type of concept, what you
yeah,
say to yourself being quite a powerful thing, to be honest. And that's a tip, But there's a lot of lessons in here, I think, that are very, very, very profound to people. I just looked at the time now, and I want to keep this to about an hour, only for people's attention spans,
yeah,
because obviously I personally find that beyond sort of an hour, you think of your average person working and you've got kids and you've got things going on. They don't always have the time to watch or listen to something. There are
yeah.
people who do these great podcasts with like James English or Trish Dixon with the boxing or people like that. They do sort of 2 hour long stuff and it's brilliant. But you can't listen to it all in like a day. So I try and keep it to about
I'm
that
not that
time.
popular. I'm not that popular, Liam. The people are going to say and listen to me for 2 hours.
No, but at the same time, what you've shared in this little talk that we've done so far is absolute gold dust, and I don't think you realise that. And I'm not just saying that because I wouldn't just say that to somebody if I didn't think it. Do you know what I mean? Just to be nice. I mean, some of what we've got into in this little talk that we've had from your hard-earned experience is absolute gold dust that can help people. To close this out, one of the other questions I wanted to ask you is actually about your future plans with Safe and your where you want to take it from here, because obviously you're growing the brand, you're going to these shows, and you're putting the t-shirts out there and the different things that you do. Where do you want to take it, or where do you see Safe being in like maybe a couple of years from now, or however long you want to think of really? I think it'd be good to get into the future plans as well.
There's there's all sorts that I'd like to do with Safe, and board directors would like to do with Safe. Obviously, the world the way it is, it comes down to money, it comes down to funding, it comes down to people giving us a break and an opportunity. Because the people I have on board are not only people that have been there with the lived experience, we've also got the qualifications as well to back that up. So we've got the experience side and we've got the qualification side of it as well. And we all want to help. I mean, there's a massive scope for mutual aid groups for fighters that can come in a safe environment, talk about how they feel. That's completely confidential. You know, like I support people one to one, fighters and fans. Partners of fighters that have gone a bit rocky or whatever. I mean, we're a community interest company. So although we've sort of been in background for a couple of years, we only became a community interest company in December of last year. So really, we're only 8 months in, 9 months in. Uh, I'd like to get on more promotions, or I'd like to be supporting more people. I'd like people, and this is not a begging thing. I'd like some funding. I'd like somebody to start going, actually, I like what you're doing. Can we support you in any way? You know, we're always open to people sharing our stuff, like yourself, you know, or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, just to get that message out there that there is this service available. And yeah, I mean, I had one lad that he got knocked out at an ICB event in Derby last year. And I gave him a key ring with contact details on, and he's looked into what we're doing, and he's gone about doing some fundraising stuff. I never met the lad awake. You know, he got sparked out. I give it to his corner man, and he's going to do some stuff for us. So if anybody wants to just raise a bit of money for us, it's a community interest company, so it's not for profit. It all goes back in to supporting people. And so, I mean, yeah, just awareness, throwing stuff out. There's so much where I think combat sports at the moment fall short on supporting the fighters. I've got the experience to help people out. So without being, you know, it's very umbrella-y and very non-specific. But it's tailor-made, you know, it's person-centered. What anybody needs, whatever any club needs, whatever each individual needs, or a fan needs within that stuff, we'll cater for it. And if we can't cater for it, we'll get in touch with somebody that can.
Absolutely. Well, I will give that a shout out as well on your behalf, and I will say anybody watching this or listening to this who does want to help out in any way, contact Darren, because you know at the end of the day, this is, how do you put it? I mean, grassroots is the wrong word, but you know this is individual. I mean, you know, you contribute money, you contribute resources to SAFE. You know where it's going, you know what's happening, you know it's being used directly. It's not like one of the big charities where you know you give your money and you don't know if it's going to the charity or if it's going to some CEO to buy a boat or something. You know where this obviously it is actually going, you know, where it needs to go. And it is very, very valuable work. I'll say I've seen the effects, you know, the positive effects of the work that Darren's doing firsthand, really, and it is absolutely extraordinary. So anybody who could reach out, contact him on social media, contact him on the website as well, and you know you guys can contribute to it. But what I will say is today, you know, I mean, we've got into some really, really good stuff. I knew it would be a good talk actually, but it's actually blown me away a bit, you know, because we've gone quite deep into like some really, really good stuff, and it's actually exceeded my expectations, and I don't say that lightly. It does happen sometimes.
I'll invoice you.
There we go. We're sorted. No, but I don't say it lightly, man. I mean, it has exceeded my expectations. I am going to have to shoot off for another call I've got with my photography business. I think you know about that, and I've got to set up an event that's happening, and get some prints ordered and some stuff, and I'm a little late for that. But I do want to say big thank you for coming on the show. Big thank you for your time.
Brilliant.
All right.
Brilliant.
All right. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.